Well, good morning. I want to talk about something today that all of us can't change. Lots of things in our life we can't change. And so you have to deal with it. You have to confront it. You have to accept it. But when you do, this thing I want to talk about, you can see it as a gift. It's something that you possess, and it's a gift. And you can be grateful for it. A lot of people, what I want to talk about, they want to deny this truth, maybe. It's easy to. We don't like to think about it, maybe. But the topic that the Lord's been dealing with me about, and what I kind of wanted to hopefully help you with, is the area of time. That's something we all have. We possess it. If we live another day, if we live another hour, that's a gift. Some people aren't going to live another hour. Some people are going to, this is going to be the last day. Hopefully nobody here, but you'd have to admit that that is possible. Our days are numbered. We don't know how many days we have. I was, and maybe that's why the Bible tries to direct us that way. In fact, in the book of James, the Bible there says that our life is like a vapor. It likens your life to a vapor. Now, in your mind, maybe that lessens your life. So I remember my grandmother used to cook beans in a pressure cooker. And I can remember that pressure cooker going off, and a little shot of steam would come out, and it would be gone almost as soon as it was there. So when I think of that, that's the picture that comes to my mind. So it's a vapor, and it tells us what it means by that. It explains us. It says it's here for a short time, and then it vanishes away. It will be like we weren't even here. And there's two ways to look at this. You could look at it as, wow, if I really think about that, I don't like to think about that. I like to think about I have unlimited amount of time. But you don't, do you? You don't, and I don't either. So we like to think about it, and I think the way that people conduct their life shows about what they think about time. If you get to it and you use time for your advantage, then you'll see it as a gift. If on the other hand you don't, then you'll undeniably waste time. So God always directs us. He says, number your days. I can remember not too long ago, somebody sent me something. It was a video link, and it was a comedian. And the information that he gave was kind of couched in obviously comedy, but he dealt with procrastination. And he put up a chart, and I've gone over this with lots of people in the church because it had an impact on me. Put up a chart, and it had a bunch of squares on it. It was a pattern of squares. And I thought, okay, what's that about? Then he said this, well, look, and he said, this is a representation of somebody's life, he said. And he said, each one of those squares represents 1 week in the life of somebody that's 90 years old. And when he said that, and I looked at the pattern then, it didn't seem like it was that many anymore. In the beginning, it seemed like it was a bunch of squares, but then I thought to myself, I can contain that. I can conceive that. It's finite. And so then I thought, wow, that's if I live to be 90. Well, my dad passed away, I think 3 going on 4 years ago, if I'm not mistaken. And if I live as long as he did, 2/3 of my life is gone. 2/3. 2/3. So I got 1/3 left. And I thought to myself, wow. Well, when poets talk about time, they talk about time as fleeting. They talk about, they deal with time that way. So you could look at it in kind of a negative way, where you say to yourself, well, I don't have a lot of time. Well, there's nothing you can do about that. Time is like a freight train. You can't stop it. So you have to confront it. On the other hand, you can look at it and you say to yourself, well, I've got today, and this is a gift. It's a gift. God's given me today. I've got this time. I don't know if I got tomorrow, but I've got right now. I've got today. So what am I going to do with today? My question is this. And by the way, the psalmist says this, and I think it's good to remember. He says, remember how short my time is. The Bible directs us to number our days. There is a number. There's a number of our days. I don't like to think about that, but there's a number to it because numbers are finite. There's a definite number. I can count that high. So I think, wow, if that's true, I've got 5 kids. I've got my kids there. I've got one graduating this year. You start to go through your life and think to yourself, I remember when he was born. He's going to graduate this year. And a lot of you can relate to what I'm saying. Some of you younger people maybe can't yet, but you will. It applies to everybody equally. So my question might be to you this morning, what's the best way to pass your time? If you were to answer that question, just answer to yourself, What is the best way to pass my time? It's a gift. God's given me time. So if it's a gift, what's the best way to pass it? Well, thankfully, the Bible tells us how to do it. So I just want to go through a couple points what the Bible says about passing your time, and maybe it'll redirect some of our thoughts. And you won't see time so much as something that you're trying to catch up to, but rather see it as a gift. Number one, you pass your time the best way is by spending time to make sure that you're saved. You got to make sure of it. The Bible says to work out your own salvation. Spend time thinking about it. Am I going to go to heaven? If I were to die today, would I go to heaven? Where would I go? There's two places, heaven or hell. That's all the Bible ever explains, nothing else. You'll go to one place or another. And if it would have happened today, if something happens to you today, and that's it, it's over, where would you go? A good way to pass your time is to think about that. A lot of people don't like to think about that. We broach the subject a lot of time with people at the door, at their homes, and they don't want to think about it. Nobody thinks about that. But it's a good way to spend your time. You're given that time. It's a good way to spend your time. Think about it. Think about it seriously. Spend your time doing that. The Bible says, I have heard thee in a time accepted. In the day of salvation have I succored thee or helped you. Behold, now is the accepted time. Behold, now is the day of salvation. Nothing in the Bible is retracted from the fact that considering salvation is immediate. Right now. Right now. So, am I saved? But you better figure that out, and you better do it right now. Number two, I think it's important to remember that God has a timetable. That was a very profound thought for me after I'd been saved a short time. The fact that God has a timetable for me. He's got my life planned out. That was a profound thought. I never considered that before. Why should I have ever considered that? So God has a place He wants me to be. He has a level He wants me to be at now. Am I there? God had a time where He orchestrated everything in the world before Jesus came to earth. It says in Galatians 4, but when the fullness of time was come, God sent forth His Son. That Bible verse tells us that God orchestrated everything from the first day of creation until Christ was born to come up with that moment, and Christ was born not 1 second later or after, because He has a timetable. So He has a timetable for you. He has a timetable for me. A good way to pass your time is to think about, am I on God's timetable or am I my own? Number three, I think it's just good to remember, just a reiteration maybe, but our days are numbered. It's good for you to spend your time remembering that you don't have forever. We've got to remember that. I don't have forever. Because if you'll pardon the expression, it kicks you. It gets you going. Because I may not have tomorrow, but I've got now. And then if that's true, then we have to see ourselves as a debtor to time. The Bible says redeeming the time. So redeeming means to put investment in to what God has given us. So if He's given us something, how do we give back? By understanding that the time I'm given is a gift from Him, so I got to do what He wants me to do. That's the best way to spend my time. God will judge all things in His time. This kind of goes back to His timetable. It's good for me to spend my time remembering God's going to judge what I do one day. And it's not that far away. Even what you say, Matthew 12:36 says that every word that men shall speak, they shall give an account. Romans 12:14 says that every man will give an account of himself to God. So we will one day give an account for our actions. You will. Think about what you did yesterday. Is everything that I did yesterday going to pass the fire of the judgment of Christ one day? Yes, no. That's the way we should spend our time. It's good to think of that. You say to yourself, I don't want to think about that. But if you think about it that way, you see time as a gift. It's a good way. It's a good thing. And then we should spend our time, might be interesting to you. The Bible teaches we should spend our time being humble. The Bible says, humble yourselves, therefore, in the mighty hand of God, that He may exalt you in due time. So God gives you time to be humble. And we're directed to humble ourselves. We're to be servants. There's a lot I could say here. To humble ourselves. Always spend your time thinking to yourself, I'm not worthy of this. I'm not worthy of the least of God's blessings. Not the least of it. Nothing. Certainly not worthy of salvation. And then be sure we spend time in prayer. A good way to spend your time is time praying. For this shall everyone that is godly pray unto thee in a time when thou mayest be found. It's good to spend your time praying. Did you pray today? Did you pray yesterday? Have you prayed at all this week? How long? How much? It's good to spend our time in prayer. You never spend time in good prayer that isn't worth it. And then lastly, remember there's always time to do what's right. To everything there's a season and a time to every purpose under heaven. You can never say to yourself, I don't have time to do what's right. That's not true. That's a lie. That's a lie. Hey, can you come to church Sunday night? I just don't have time. That's not true. There's a time to every purpose under the heaven. And if God's purpose for you is to listen to his word, which it is, and God shed his blood for the church, this is the pillar and ground of the truth, then you should spend your time in church. And there's no excuse not to. And that's a good way to spend your time. And what does it really cost you? A little bit of gas money, maybe, a little bit of your time. Most of the time, if you consider what you've wasted this last week, it at least equals a church service. So God help us to remember that we need to redeem our time and to always consider this and look at it as a gift, as something good, and let's use it for God's glory.